Welcome, everyone, back to a brand new episode of Let's Talk Broncos special mailbag edition. And boy, am I happy about it. I'm Brie Maestas here with Zach Seegers and Joey Richards. Guys, how are you?
I'm doing really well. I was excited. We forgot to put the mailbag thing up. We did it a little late. It didn't matter, though. We still got a ton of questions from everybody, and I am very excited to answer them. A lot of good questions, too. They weren't just like throwaway questions. We had a lot of good questions today. For a team that is losing as much as the Broncos, that's kind of cool. Broncos fans do not ever give up. They still have questions about the team. They're still interested, still want to get different takes. So I'm excited for today's episode. Zach, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing well, trying to adjust my setup over here, but doing well. Excited to be back. Excited to have my microphone back. Oh, except I'm not even on the right mic. My audio's get so much better. There we go. I finally have my microphone back. I'm not having to use my AirPods because I lost my microphone there. Yeah, bad team player, bad for the show. Just excited for this. Everything Joey said is true. Credit to all the listeners for coming through big with the questions. I think this was the most impressive outpouring yet. It happened in like an hour, and credit to all of you. I had to make the graphics immediately, so if anyone came in a little late, they got cut off just because we got so many. But I think we'll get to them all at some point, hopefully. And yeah, I'm excited with the listeners. Cal got left out, but we're gonna have like 5 more already in the tank for next week. It's exciting.
Speaking of Cal, he's in the chat. I can't turn sound on, but hey, so he's just watching us. Let's act like we're happy to see him. And I want to say hi to everyone.
He didn't hear that I said he was left out.
Paul was first in the chat, though. Special shouts out to Paul. Sounds like he's got our notifications on. Hello, everyone. I'm not sure what emojis he used here because I can't see them, but we appreciate you tuning in. Samuel Castro, and what would I say? A reoccurring member of the Let's Talk Broncos chat is here. What's up, LTB crew? I don't want to waste any time, but I do want to let you know that if you'd like to interact with the show and join the discussion, because that's what the LTB community is all about, I need you to hop on over to Mile High Sports YouTube or Facebook. Get your comments and questions highlighted. This is a mailbag, but we're going to try to get through these as fast as we possibly can because, as the boys already alluded to, we got a ton of them today. Without further ado, let's hop directly into it. And I just want to thank all of you for joining along with us because it should be a really fun show. Douche Willis over on Twitter says, how big is a Cards win this weekend? We need to pick closer to 10 rather than 25. I think he was alluding to what the Broncos are going to get with their surprise pick that they got in a trade. Zach, walk us through who has the pick originally and how the Broncos end up with it.
Yeah, I couldn't fit the handles with the graphics, so I just did everyone's, name, and shout out Douche Willis. That is a great Twitter handle. Thank you, Cal, for being child friendly. But how big is a Cards win this weekend? It would be huge. I think there's like no way they're getting it. I think Cards upsetting the 49ers would be akin to like the Broncos upsetting the Chiefs. But to be fair, we almost saw that. So maybe it happens again. But it would be big. I think, I wanted to pull up the Tankathon so I'd have it exact. Joey, Bree, answer how big it would be, and I'll get the exact, stats.
I think any win here that gets the Broncos closer to a top 10 pick is a good one. Whether or not it will happen, though, I don't know. The NFL's been pretty crazy. Postseason comes into play any given Sunday. I don't know how I feel about it. I think anything is good at this point. The Broncos are going to be clamoring for a war chest, but I think the person who is the most eligible to answer this is going to be Joey Richards at JR Drafts over on Twitter. Joey, take it away.
The 49ers are rolling right now. It would be a really big deal if the Cardinals had won, just because obviously we want to get closer to the top of the draft. We don't want to be further. Like, it's as obvious as I can possibly make it, but it's true. It's just the likelihood of it happening, I think, is slim. Now, I will also point out that it's football and anything can happen in football, right? Like, we just saw the Broncos play a close game to the Chiefs. Like, the talent, like the teams that you find are really, really good and teams that you find are really, really bad, the disparity of talent really isn't that far off. So I guess it could happen. It's just a game the 49ers should win at the end of the day. They should win it. I think that they will win it. But yeah, I mean, I would be stoked if they lost. I am preying on the 49ers downfall. I want that draft pick as close to the top as possible. It's really disappointing how good they've been playing.
Joey, spite watching is how I've been watching the NFL for about half the season. So it's basically anybody's game, though. I like how you put that. There is a very minor discrepancy between all 32 NFL teams, but some are really bad. Broncos happen to be one of them right now. Zach, any further conclusion to the research you were doing?
Yes. Yes. My research has been concluded. Niners currently picking 29th. With a loss, it could get to 25th, but that's nonsense because it's based on playoff results entirely. At this point, the one thing you would like with a 49ers loss is it prevents them from getting the 1 seed. If the 49ers get the 1 seed, they're automatically in the divisional round, which will make the Broncos pick automatically one of the 8 last in the draft. If they remain the 2 seed, although it's pretty unlikely, whatever 7 seed NFC team, Lions, Packers, actually Packers, Niners. I mean, the history there hasn't been great for Green Bay, but maybe Rodgers finally gets his revenge. If he did, that's, a really nice jump up for the Broncos. Because actually, based on the Niners record, it would probably be, if they get that 1 seed, you're probably looking at a pick in the bottom 5, at worst bottom 6 of the first round. As long as they stay the 2 seed, there's a good possibility that you can be picking somewhere 24 through 20. It would be more like 23, 24, but still really, really good.
There you go.
Not bad. I think we'll have lots of coverage on what the Broncos will be doing with those picks once we find out what they are here. Right on Let's Talk Broncos. You want to keep it here. I would say set your notifications, much like Paul did at the early iteration of these shows. Yes.
And shout out to Paul. Big shout out to Paul, because he got me right. There's 1 less pick in the first round of this year's draft because the Dolphins' whole scandal. So subtract 1 number from everything I said. You'd be looking at 27-28 with the bye. If they don't get that 1 seed, the door is open for something that's more like 22-23, which I think in that area of the draft, I think there's, from what I've heard, I, again, haven't really dived into the draft too hard. What I've heard, there's a talent shelf around 20-25 or so. So the difference between 23 and 28 could be really big for the Broncos.
Cool. On to the next one. Call of Duty asks, top 5 head coaching candidates not named Harbaugh or Payton, go. You know what I found out earlier today on Twitter that was really interesting to me? I know we're going to draft this, but I'm taking one overall just because I feel like I am allowed to do so. Why would Mike McDaniel be in the hot seat? Are the Dolphins just falling down everywhere? Zach, you look like you're full of vigor. What you got?
It's very possible. The Jets and Dolphins, these are very erratic ownerships, and their teams finished the season on horrific losing streaks. I think anyone watching this would go, Saul and Mike McDaniel should keep their jobs. They've done great. Those ownerships are a little crazy. That ownership got busted colluding because they wanted to blow it up for Sean Payton and Tom Brady. Who's available this offseason? Sean Payton and Tom Brady. If the Dolphins are open, they immediately become the most appealing job to Sean Payton and the most attractive landing spot to Tom Brady. So that option is still very much on the table. It looked dead. It would be a little awkward now, but it's very, very possible the Dolphins do that. So, wow, I didn't consider that, but that's a very good number 1 overall pick out of left field. I don't know if he'd come to Denver, but hey, he's a Denver native. Why not? I love that pick, Bree.
Thank you. I'm going to say, I don't know, somebody go next. Because if I pick, it's going to seem like favorites. Joey goes.
Okay. I want to throw out Kellen Moore. I really like Kellen Moore. I don't think so much with Russell Wilson. It's kind of an odd fit there. But if you're talking about a young offensive coach, Kellen Moore definitely fits the bill there. And you really, really got to love what he did. So last year, he was kind of a name out there. Then it cooled off towards the end. This year, you've really seen what the Cowboys have been able to do with Cooper Rush at quarterback, right? Kellen Moore is a really good offensive mind, an up-and-comer in this league, and I think he'll have a head coach job sooner than later. So I want to throw out now Cowboys offensive coordinator Kellen Moore. I really like him.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. I really like the Kellen Moore pick. Honestly, well, here's the thing. I like his offense. I do like what we've seen from him this year. I agree with you. He's eventually going to be an NFL head coach, but it does. I don't know. I'm a little cold on Kellen Moore still. I'm going to go Shane. I just, like you said, I think he's an up and comer, but I want to see him do it a little longer, I guess. For me. That would be my thing. I was a little worried. I mean, but I don't know. We gotta. It surprised me, but I like it. Steichen. I'll go with. I like how he proved to solve problems. I think I said that a few times already on this show. He's been around the league for a while. You've seen him run a bunch of different offensive schemes for, a guy like Phillip Rivers, a guy like versus a guy like Jalen Hurts, versus like Gardner Minshew. The talent in Philly definitely helps him look good, but I like how that Philadelphia coaching staff has approached things philosophically, and that's a tree I would like to target.
Very interesting. I'm going, obviously, Coach Evero, because I think that he's done so much with this Broncos team that the continuity would serve them well. This roster seems to enjoy him quite a bit. And I think it's really important to keep a player-focused, defense-focused coach here, because we don't want to see a regression there considering they're doing so well. But I think he'd be able to work with Russ. He already has been with the team this past year, and I think he's done a great job. Although he doesn't have any head coaching experience, I think this would be the one place where he would get a good shot. I think he's already going to get a ton of looks this offseason, so he would be the fourth pick for me. And so fifth pick, I think, goes to you, Joey.
Okay, I like your pick there. Evero slipped my mind. Honestly, he did slip my mind just because he's already on the Broncos staff. But okay, here's a guy that I think Broncos country should be excited about. I think Ben Johnson, offensive coordinator, Detroit Lions, is a guy that Broncos country should really, really, really keep an eye on. I don't know if he's going to be considered. I think that the way it looks now, Penner's obviously not a football guy, right? So I think he's going to look more to the proven product, what we've seen from these guys, i.e. Sean Payton, Jim Harbaugh, right? That's kind of what we've seen there. But Ben Johnson said, what he's doing in Detroit is really, really cool with Jared Goff at quarterback. He has one of the best offenses in the league. His run concepts are awesome. And he has Detroit fans thinking that they should keep Jared Goff. like that's kind of the way that he's been doing that over there. So big shout out to Ben Johnson. He definitely should be a head coach, I think, or get a crack at it. He's one of those guys that I think obviously a little risk there because he just is up and coming. But hey, I think that if you aren't early, and this goes back to my Kellen Moore point, if you aren't early on those guys, you're going to miss out. Just straight up. You're going to miss out because there's going to be another team that's early. So I think both of those people, Ben Johnson and Kellen Moore, kind of fit the bill as the trendy offensive mind that the NFL is always looking for at head coach.
And then I'll go D'Amico Ryans. I think he's really, really smart defensively. The talent definitely helps. But in terms of like building a culture, I think Shanahan's built a really effective culture there in San Francisco. And I think you look at like Robert Saleh coming off that tree, really creating a successful culture. And then Mike McDaniel branching off that tree and creating a successful culture. And D'Amico Ryans, I really like his energy on the sideline, and defensive genius.
Any ideas who would be the offensive coordinator for if Evero got the head coaching position? Question from Coop.
I have no clue. I know he has. So what's interesting about him is that he was an offensive assistant at one point in time, right? Like he would that's something that we all learned under this Harbaugh situation, that he was an offensive assistant at one point. Now the guy, even with Harbaugh, there's some ties to if Greg Roman was gone, could they hire Greg Roman? That's a name I'd throw out there. That fit with Russ is really, really weird. I want to throw that out there. That's about as weird as an offensive coordinator quarterback mesh as I can think of. But I don't know who else I could really think of as an offensive coordinator forever, or if there's any ties I can really put together there.
I'd look at the Rams tree. Who's the guy who they lost to Kentucky and then they just got the guy from Kentucky. I'd look at that guy, though, again, he didn't overlap with Evero. I'd look at Kevin O'Connell's staff. I'd look at the Jets staff because Mike LaFleur brought a lot of guys over. I'd look again at the Packers staff. I think Evero's OC, like when Evero gets a head coaching job, I don't think it'll be this cycle. I think it's probably next cycle. I think he'll be like D'Amico Ryans, where he's really hyped up this cycle but doesn't get it, and then next year circles around and gets it after showing another good year as a defensive coordinator, either in Denver or elsewhere. I believe a lot in him to do that. I think his OC would be Hackett. I don't think you can do that in Denver, obviously. I don't know who it would be in Denver. Those two have each other's backs. I think he would go, okay, Hackett wasn't ready to be a head coach, but he is a good offensive coordinator. Look at what he's done in Green Bay. They'll probably throw Russ under the bus. Go with all that, the offensive line, all those injuries. Like, look, there were like these flashes here or there. We could do it.
He follows up with Wes Phillips. I don't know if he would leave Minnesota, though. Probably not. I feel like it's a loaded question.
I have to do more staff deep diving, which I'm going to definitely be doing in the coming weeks, trying to figure out whose trees whatever Broncos coach might pillage.
I like Cal's comment here because it falls in line with my personal brand. Broncos have to get and be weird to catch up in the AFC West, so find weirdo coaches. I actually think he means this in the best way possible because this is how I would express what I'd like to see. And I think somebody like Mike McDaniel is exactly that, where you change things up a bit and maybe buck the norm. Not so much to where you come in without any idea of what you're doing, but so you come in and shake things up. Joey?
It's kind of funny because Cal says that, right? He says weirdo coaches. And I want to kind of relate this to, I think that this is a perfect time to either take a big swing or a boomer bust. I think that the safe option doesn't really do me much right here because I don't have a roster in place to be safe. Where is safe going to get me when I have so many holes on my roster? I'm looking for someone that can like get more out of his unit than the talent on the field. I think that
raises all ships.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking for like a big head coach hire, whether it be a Jim Harbaugh and Sean Payton, which are proven guys that can do that, or whether it's a Ben Johnson, Kellen Moore. Okay, it doesn't work out. We're gone after that. But what does a safe coach do me right now? That's kind of the way I look at this whole head coaching cycle.
Yeah, I would have to agree there. Zach Seeger says, ask questions live. That is right, folks. We are live. Go ahead and hop on over to the Mile High Sports YouTube or the Facebook page. All your comments will come through, and I'll pick whether or not I want to highlight them. Glenn Hauser has a question. I kind of want us to just answer this real quick. It doesn't have to be completely long-winded, but Glenn Hauser wants to know, do you think Payton gets fired after the draft? We talked about this on Let's Talk Broncos. I don't know if it does happen. That would seem like a likely timeline, but I'm not going to guess that it is going to happen. Zach?
If it's Payton or Harbaugh, I say it's definitely on the table, especially if it's Harbaugh. I don't know. I'd say there's like, if they get that home run head coach that's going to get a lot of power in the organization, I think it's at least like a 33% chance.
I think that it won't happen this year, even if you do hire one of those big guys. but it will happen the year after that. And then they will, if it doesn't work out this next year, they will use that person as a fall guy. That's kind of my opinion there. And they'll enter an offseason fresh, looking for a new coach, GM that you match with a Jim Harbaugh. That's kind of the way I look at it.
The Final Word radio program for Mile High Sports Radio, Joe Rico and Alex Ramirez. Happy new LTB. Happy new year back to you guys. It comes down to Sean Payton or Jim Harbaugh, right? Anybody else would be a letdown for Broncos country. I think there is a loud majority of Broncos country who would like to see either of them. A big flashy name, especially after CU lands Deion Sanders. It would almost be a letdown if they go with a first-time coach. I don't think that they're going to leave a stone unturned on this search just because they've been bitten in the past. Guys, do you think anybody outside of these two top candidates has a chance? I go with yes.
I think Jim Harbaugh does and Sean Payton does not. I think everything that leads you, everything I've read from the insiders or everything I've heard, it sounds like the Broncos would really like Sean Payton, but Sean Payton doesn't really want the Broncos, where Jim Harbaugh is a lot more likely of one of those candidates. If Jim Harbaugh says no, I don't know where the Broncos go after that. Honestly, I don't know. It's been rumored to be Dan Quinn. I would hope if they don't land a Jim Harbaugh, they really do a widespread search at head coach. I want nets casted everywhere. I want different guys brought in. I want it to be a whole interview process. I don't want it to just fall onto Dan Quinn. Because you're entering a tier lower, you know what I mean? And there's a bunch of those guys. The Jim Harbaugh's in a class of his own. The Sean Payton's in a class of his own.
Yeah, I fully agree. I'm trying to pull up the odds really quick that Joey sent me from OddsShark. And yeah, Jim Harbaugh plus 200. Wow, Darrell Bevel up to plus 500. That is terrifying to me. But yeah, I think that's a combo for a different time. Jim Harbaugh and Sean Payton as two of the top four options there for you. I don't know. I think it would be a letdown if it's anyone else. Those are really good head coaches. They're fantastic. I'm writing some stuff up on Jim Harbaugh and Sean Payton now, and their success is amazing, especially because Harbaugh really didn't have great quarterback play. I think Kaepernick did some special things for about a year or two, but got a little figured out, struggled to develop touch, and not that I'm a Kaepernick hater, but he was not the Hall of Fame quarterback you generally associate with mini dynasties like Harbaugh kind of cultivated in San Francisco, and then Sean Payton's resume speaks for itself. So yeah, anyone else would be a letdown, especially considering that those look like real options.
That's fair. Paul, this has been a topic of discussion all day, it seems. Dan Quinn's name keeps coming back up. Paul says, yawn on Quinn. Joey just got ready to fight. Joey, any words on Dan Quinn real quick?
Dan Quinn has become somebody, the more I hear people, it just feels like I don't understand why everybody is I'm not sure if it's some people not being truthful with what's going on with his resume, or if it's people just being uninformed, or me. I mean, it's possible I'm wrong here, but the Dan Quinn situation, he's being thrown up into the same conversation as a Sean Payton or Jim Harbaugh, and I just do not see it whatsoever. I don't think it's even close. I don't think he's nearly as proven as those guys. I don't care if he's 0-1 in the Super Bowl like the others. I really don't. To me, there's just so much complexity to the head coaching talk. There really is. It's not just looking at 0-1 in a Super Bowl. It's not just looking at basic win or loss. You have to look at situation year to year. There's different things there. What's the staff they're putting in place? There's so many different things. People will credit him for hiring Kyle Shanahan. Or to Samuel Castro, he said, remember, it was Dan Quinn and Kyle Shanahan that took exactly. I want to highlight that. I think that everyone is giving him so much credit for hiring Kyle Shanahan. Now, I do give him credit for making the obvious decision there, but it would be untruthful to say it wasn't the obvious decision. This guy has been offensive coordinator for 6 years. Obviously, Mike Shanahan's son was an offensive coordinator for Mike Shanahan, one of the best offensive coaches of all time. And then went to Cleveland, had success with Brian Hoyer at quarterback to the point where at some part in that season, people were looking at it like Brian Hoyer is a quarterback. He literally had to fight his way out of there. There's an article online where he wrote a 32-point presentation and presented it to Brown's head coach at the time about why he needs to leave. So they didn't want to let him go. And the only way you do leave is if you know you have a ton of options, right? You're not taking that risk if you don't. So he took that, and then he went to a loaded Falcons offense with Matt Ryan that ended up becoming an MVP quarterback. A bunch of different stuff there, but it's hard for me to give him a ton of credit there. It was the obvious decision. I'll give him credit for that. And then I look at the offense coordinators after that, and it just wasn't that good. And that's kind of what got him out of that job in general. So he just isn't in the same sphere as those other guys because so much of his success was reliant upon Kyle Shanahan being there. That's kind of my point. Does anyone else have anything to add on to the Dan Quinn thing? I had to get that out.
No, you're fine. Okay. So since January of 2015, right, Quinn and Payton have been tied together. That's why he's always linked to this Broncos job. But despite having these ties, despite being the favorite since before the interview process, he did not win the job last year. He lost it to Nathaniel Hackett. He was scheduled for a second interview, or I don't even know if they set a date. He was set to get a second interview, and it didn't go further than that. That should be a red flag to everyone. He had the inside track. He had the relationships built up already. Why didn't it happen last year? Right? Like, why didn't they even do the second interview? Why did they get so scared about losing Hackett? Hackett boat raced this guy that bad? That's curious. Then the Falcons thing, right? Joey brought it up with Kyle Shanahan. They go from the best, and even the Kyle Shanahan hire. The first year, he's 22nd in the NFL in DVOA, offensive DVOA. So the next year, they're first, and it's that awesome Falcons run, and that's a great hire because of that. But you only got one good year of awesome offense. After that, they dropped to 9th, and a lot of this was also driven by the talent on that team. They dropped from 1st to 9th to 15th to 22nd, and then the 2020 season where Quinn only oversees the first 5 weeks of it. I think they climbed back up to 21st. With Shanahan, he's a 600 winning percentage coach. Without Shanahan, he's at 0.455. That's really concerning. The defense found itself in the top third of the NFL just once in his 6 years running the show. That's concerning in terms of points allowed. They finished in the bottom third 4 times, meanwhile. And then in terms of DVOA, to go back to advanced metrics, bottom half of the league every single year except for the year he was fired. The defense got better, and that was a consistent through line. In 2019, it could have been 2018. One of those 2 years, he also had defensive play calling removed from him. The other time being when he was fired in 2020. Both those years, the defense got better following that change. So that's a red flag to me. I think you could say he's learned some defensive things in Dallas. I would say he has, but having Micah Parsons helps that a ton. Micah Parsons is a generational talent. He's a freak and opens up a lot of creative options for a defensive coordinator. I don't know if he carries that over to Denver. The other argument for him is like, well, now he's experienced. He's a good CEO head coach. Look at his hires. They are not impressive. They're very concerning outside of the Kyle Shanahan one. Good on him there, but I don't love his track record.
I'm going to give everyone a little bit of whiplash here. Keep your questions and comments coming, but I think we've been treading a little bit, not negative, just down. And we got the most lovely question from Ryan Blackburn, the Denver Nuggets beat reporter for Mile High Sports. It's been a Mile High Sports heavy day. The final word is in here. Ryan Blackburn is in here, and he asks, has there been a moment or event or some part of the season that gives each of you the most hope, positivity for next year? And if so, what? I will go first, but I'm going to struggle here, and I'll be quick about it. I I think seeing flashes from the rookies, and I'm going to name Greg Dulcich because I think that he has done tremendously well, and I'd like to see what he's able to do without injury. Finding new favorite players that kind of really spark your interest in the sport really helps. Same with Alex Singleton. There's been a lot of fun players to watch who have had a major impact on this roster. Whether or not they're back for next year, we shall see. And if they're healthy, I would absolutely enjoy it. But it's things like that. Watching players like Damari Mathis come in and absolutely light stuff up. Justin Simmons having another career year. Those are my positive takeaways from this season. And I hope it just gets better next. But we shall see. Joey, you raised your hand first, so I'll throw it over to you for a follow-up.
Yeah, okay. So I think the player that gives you the most hope on the Broncos is Patrick Surtain, right? I think that's pretty obvious. He's young. He's really good. The moment when I realized, and Zach and Bree, you guys were ahead of this way before me because you guys were at Broncos practices and saw it firsthand. But you guys were coming on this podcast swearing that Patrick Surtain took the next step. Now, the game, I got on board with you guys because I was able to see it live, like you guys saw it at practice, was that Seattle game against DK Metcalf. Boy, was that a fun matchup. And I really studied that. I wrote an article on that matchup. But it just showed, like, DK Metcalf, everybody knows how freaky he is. I think people sometimes forget how big of a competitor DK Metcalf is at that size and speed. He's physical. He wants to get in your face. He wants to compete. And Patrick Surtain was with him that entire time. Followed him from one side of the field to the other. If he was in the slot, Patrick Surtain was going to go there. And DK won a little of his, and Patrick Surtain won the majority. It was a matchup, and that was the moment for me where I'm like, okay, that gives me hope for the future. Now, looking back at least we have that guy that was so good in that matchup.
It's the moment your brain chemistry changed this offseason, I'll tell you that. Zach, Go ahead.
Yeah, that was definitely an optimistic moment. I think the thing that gives me optimism for next year, though PS2 is a good pick, I'm really worried they're going to keep Russ, if I'm being honest. And so I would look at like the Raiders game, I think, honestly, when it was like actually good offense. It annoys me that Broncos country, all of us have been so starved for like offensive competence that we're like, oh, that Chiefs game was really good quarterbacking. I think it was like competent and he finally looked a little comfortable, and that provides some optimism. You saw the running stuff, but like the Russ highlight reel, and it's going to be an ugly highlight reel. It's not going to be the most impressive, but I think just seeing like that Chargers first half, that Raiders game, just like some of those good moments where it's like, maybe you can build something out of this. I think it's always going to be a disappointing move. I think maybe even the worst reality is the one where Russ looks salvageable next year, and then they invest 2, 3, 4 years into it. But there's a good chance, I think, next year, maybe not a good chance, there's a real chance, the 40-ish, 30%, probably somewhere in there, that it's the best offense the Broncos have had since 2014. And that's not the highest bar, but I think it can reach like that level of competency. And I think the Raiders game and like the first half of the Chargers and maybe what we've seen post hamstring is evidence of that. Like maybe you can copium yourself into believing it was all injury. Fingers crossed.
I mean, that is some optimism, and thanks for that. I'm going to throw another question on. I also want to say I see a lot of questions coming through. We're going to try to mark these. We're going to earmark these. Call of Duty, I want to give you a shout out. We did get to your first question that you dropped on over to us over on Twitter, but I see that you keep sending in some more, and they're really good questions, so we don't want to ignore those. I'm not trying to. We just had a lot come through Twitter, so we're going to get to those real quickly. Jolene over on Twitter asks, in light of Rosberg's last media availability, what is one improvement improvement that you would like to see from the Kansas City game going into Sunday's game versus the Chargers. I think most importantly that you have to continue to improve off of what we already saw. There's a couple of things that didn't work for me, which felt like a timing issue, not on the defense, but on the offense. And I think that just gets better with more reps, more confidence. That's a Russ thing. And so I think if he can show improvement on Sunday, I would be happy about that. And maybe they'll be competitive against the Chargers and Herbert as well.
I mean, things have gotten better. With I don't know. It's hard for me to say, right? Because I've said this so many times. It's like, it's a lot like when a coach gets fired in the NBA or it gets ejected from the NBA and you get a life of confidence. So I don't want to put too much. So much has changed since Rosberg has been the coach off of this one time. You know what I mean? So I can't put that much stake into it. I just think it's like, Jolene, it's really hard for me to answer this question because it feels like so much has been the same, and it's been the offensive side of the ball. Like, I don't know what else to say. That's what I would say. Like, hey, I would love to see better play from the offense. That's kind of what I would like to see. I don't know, Zach. What about you?
Yeah, for me, it's like better play from the offense is part of it, but like, I do think Russ looked a little more comfortable in that Chiefs game, like in moments, in spurts. There was some moments of just like, oh, it doesn't look like he's having a panic attack. Like it looked a little better. The interception didn't look as bad watching it back as I thought it was live. So that's good. It's just, man, I don't know. I would love to see that, but like with a real offense, because for most of that game, it was like 3 yards per attempt stuff, where it was like they were getting 5 yards per completion and or 6 yards, 7 yards per completion. And then it was crazy. It was crazy how inefficient the offense was, how like underneath and small everything was. And if we could see that comfortability on like a bit of a greater scale against a better defense in the Chargers, I would feel more hope.
Your voice breaking made me laugh. Glenn Hauser says it literally
believe in it.
literally pains Zach to say anything favorable about Russ. Well, I mean, he can't be perfect. We got some lightning round questions I want to throw out to you guys. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. How many thirst messages does Bree get, and have they scarred her psyche? This is from Gamblebot over on Twitter. Let's just go with yes. I don't know how many. I can't count them. I won't count them. They go to a spam box. You can't even get through. I just see the little thing and I know to click on them.
Send them to really Bree's council actually manages all the thirst traps. So that's the mistake people make. They DM Bree. If you want to get through to Bree, you need a DM at LWYRUP406 on Twitter and send your thirst traps that way. And then that's how you get them to Bree.
Yes, please. That's
my God.
where you need to do that without question.
Her general counsel.
Mm-hmm.
That is absolutely ridiculous. D-Link says, position you want the Broncos to go after in free agency, and any chance Randy Gregory is one and done in Denver. I can't even read. I laughed and I fell over. I'd be really sad if Randy Gregory is one and done. I really like Randy Gregory, not only the person, but the player. But it could potentially go in that direction because the experiment didn't go over well. I think he only played a handful of games. Joey.
I do not think so. I think that there's too many questions with Nick Benito and oh my gosh, Nick Benito and Baron Browning. There's too much questions with them. You would rather have a room full of 3 questions that have a lot of potential than 2 only that have a lot of potential, I guess. So I don't see them getting rid of them, especially with Russ being back. Like, I just don't. You're going to try to win.
Sorry, Joey. It's undoable from a cut standpoint. Maybe they trade him just financially. But even then, you're eating like $8 million in dead cap and freeing up $7 million. With those $7 million, are you finding a better edge than Randy Gregory? Possible if they go the hard rebuild route. But I think even then, pretty unlikely.
Yeah.
Very good. I'm going to do something really weird that I don't normally anticipate, but I'm going to drop off now, and the boys are going to take it from here. I want to wish you all a very wonderful night. The show's still going though. I had to get out of here. I gotta go do something. So bye, Broncos country.
We'll shout you out, Bree. Bye, Bree.
Thank you. Bye.
And now the show collapses.
No.
Wow.
Joe, actually,
I was gone for like 2 seconds.
Bree,
was that the oh yeah, this is our last lightning question. There we go. Last lightning question. Bree, get out of here. We need to start talking trash about you. Jonah asks, Joey, I'll throw this to you because you're the draft guy. Do you see any surprise pick in the first round other than right tackle?
Okay, I don't think right tackle would be okay. I literally think that any defensive pick would be a surprise to Broncos country because they need so much offense. I think that any of them would. Like this whole offseason, I predict we're all going to be focusing on offense, and rightfully so. The offense is terrible. It should be where the Broncos focus at. Now, from my view of the draft this year, guys, really, after like pick 6, there's a pretty substantial drop-off to where I see guys that could be picked in the 15th. He could also be picked at 30th. That's kind of the way I see this draft. And if the draft board falls a certain way, I could see them drafting an edge rusher. I could see them drafting a safety. There's just not a lot of the top tier wide receivers that you would be looking for in the first round. There's not a lot of top tier offensive tackles. There really isn't. Once those guys are going to be scooped up, it's kind of be a free-for-all at every position. It's just BPA at that point. There's not going to be a ton. So I definitely could see edge or safety, one of those positions being a first-round pick for the Broncos that could surprise some people.
I don't see a surprise pick in the first round because I don't think any pick would be a surprise. Like they could even quarterback. I don't think would be that surprising. I could see them going running back. I could tight end. Like tight end would be a surprise, but I could maybe see that just because the talent's there. And I don't think Greg Dulcich is like a true inline guy. And you could find that a little differently with our Darius Washington if you just wanted to go offensive weapon. Like maybe, and in the range they're drafting, like maybe that's what makes the most sense. That might be the best answer to the question because I don't think any pick on the offensive line would be a surprise. I agree with the point you said about defense from like a needs standpoint, but if Payton's still drafting, we know how much he believes in like BPA overall or whatever, at least he claims to. That he definitely shuns at positional value. So I don't know if he'd place a positional value on offense. And it seems like in that 20s range, most of the talent is defensive. So I wouldn't even be that surprised with a defensive pack. Like linebacker would surprise me. But they could use defensive line. Benito's looking shaky. They could go edge. That might be a surprise pick, but I could see it. So edge or tight end would be my answer. Just on my rant.
I feel that. Okay. Edge or tight end. I could see it's a lot harder for me to see tight end than it is edge, specifically because you have Russell Wilson. Now the talent might be there, but it's just hard for me to envision. Like he's gotten like Dulcich has gotten the most out of this situation. It's hard for me to imagine Russ figuring out how to throw the 2 different tight ends and utilize them. Like that seems like a lot.
It's a strong point, Joey. Paul says trade down. I think that's smart. Broncos need more picks. I don't love the talent in the range where they're likely going to be picking. Trade down, get more. What do you say, Joey?
I totally agree with that, Zach. I think that the Broncos, the talent at the late of the first at the end of the first round is very similar to the second round. Like you can find similar talent there. It's not a huge drop off. Like there's going to be after you get through Will Anderson and Jalen Carter at the top of the draft. Then after that, it's a huge drop off. You're going to want one of those top 2 picks if you have a need on the defensive side of the ball because you're not going to find prospects like that. It gets a lot more argumentative. Who's better, this guy or this guy? And one guy might fall into the second round. Like that's just the way the end of this first round is going to work. The the Broncos should definitely trade out if it's a possibility. Now, my worry is that there's going to be a lot of teams that have a similar thought process there. And it's just all about finding a team that wants to trade up. That's going to be the difficulty for the Broncos there.
If they can find and it probably requires the Niners exiting a little early. Like, I think Will Levis is going to fall as the process goes on. I think he's one of these guys, and Joey, you follow the draft closely. I'm sure you see it where like DeMarvin Leal, for example, that's an extreme example. But for the longest time, people were talking about him as a first round pick, a top 10 pick, because that's what he was hyped up as by like ESPN preseason. And that's what everyone hears for like the longest amount of time. And so you don't hear how things change the senior season. I think Will Levis was like really not good this year, which is amazing because Rich Cangarello's the quarterback whisperer. Sarcasm.
Now that Bree's gone, yes. Let's get into our Rich Cangarello talking points.
So it's possible Rich Cangarello just ruined Will Levis because I'm unimpressed by Scangarello. But Will Levis took a big step back this year. And I think that is, I don't know, I could see in this quarterback class where it's not that strong, and I think he's probably the fourth most appealing option. Maybe he's a guy that gets drafted 2024.
Ooh,
I mean, picks 20 to 24, 20 to 28. And then these quarterbacks, especially a developmental guy like Will Levis, you want that fifth-year option so you can maximize the rookie quarterback window. If you talk about trading, sorry, there's a fly in my face. If you want to trade out of the first round, I think that's the avenue for it.
Zach, I want to agree with you on Levis, but every person, so if you're looking for people that aren't just mocking people in certain places, I highly recommend that you go follow like the Daniel Jeremiah's of the world, the Dane Bruglers. Those two guys, they make their mocks.
No, you're right.
Involved. And everything I hear about Levis is that NFL teams are a lot higher on him than media is, to the point where some teams will have him as their quarterback one. I've heard that from these people with sources. It's insane to me. It doesn't make any sense, but that's just what people are talking about.
The four quarterbacks. Do you think we see four quarterbacks in the top 10?
Which okay, I also want to say that speaks volumes about this class to me.
I don't think we see that happen. I don't think
top 10. No. Top 15, I think we could. It could be,
really?
Which is so. I think everyone has Anthony Richardson projected to go too low. In my mind, I think
he's flying.
By the time the draft comes up, he'll be flying up. If it's true that Levis is some teams' quarterbacks once, I expect him to go a lot higher than media is going to want to admit. And then it's just like, where does CJ Stroud and Bryce Young have been the top two guys this entire time? What happens with them?
They're going top 10, I think. What about okay, how about this as a trade out guy? The Broncos have been throwing him in like the third round on like mock draft, or people have been throwing him in the third round to the Broncos on like mock draft websites. I don't know if he lasts that long. What about a Hendon Hooker, a guy who was talked about as a guy climbing into the first round? You know, if you want a guy to develop, he's coming off that ACL tear, I believe, right?
Right.
So you might want that extra year to have him, that fifth year. I don't think anyone would trade up for him. I don't think he's that level of prospect. But yeah, it would be hard to trade out of the first round if it's not for a quarterback, unless we're looking at, you know, the 49ers making it to the NFC Championship or something as their record projects them. Like if they're that second best team in the NFC and you have a pick in the bottom 4 of the first round, and trading out of the first round means, you know, moving back 5 picks, then I think it's really likely.
Yeah, no, I agree. I would love for the Broncos to trade down. That's the end. Like that's what I would say. And if it is for a quarterback, that I think that is the most likely route for a team trading up. They're going to want that 5th-year option on that quarterback, right, before having to pay him that big deal if they actually do believe in him. So that I think that's the most likely. And also, you're just going to want that quarterback. If you believe in him, you're going to trade up to get him before another team can take him. So I'd also agree with you there. If there is a quarterback there, Zach, one of those guys, I could see the Broncos trading out and another team trading up for that guy.
Agreed. Would you take a wide receiver if we stayed in the first in this draft? For me, it's like if the right guy's there, like maybe a Quentin Johnson is exciting. There's another question here about the Broncos. Samuel Castro says the Broncos need a Swiss Army knife kind of player, somebody with crazy fast speed. I don't know if Jalen Hyatt's that Swiss Army player, but he does have crazy speed. I think Will Fuller's Dane Brugler's comp for him, and I think that's fantastic. I think that would bring a lot to the Broncos offense. I think then you look at this team with Judy and Sutton and Hyatt and Dulcich, and maybe none of them are like elite weapons, but they all are like good or to really good. And you can build an offense out of that, or a passing game out of that for sure. Joey, sorry, I didn't let you answer the wide receiver question. How rude of me. Go ahead.
No, all good, man. I would just think that I think that this wide receiver class, would I like to draft a wide receiver in the first round? If a number one wide receiver was there, I would love to take that guy. I just wonder if that guy – I just don't see many guys with the potential to be a number one. This guy demands a change in your coverage wide receiver in this draft. There's not a lot. Quinn Johnson has the ability to do that. I think Cedric Tillman is a name everyone kind of sleeps on. I love Cedric Tillman out of Tennessee. Everyone should go check him out. I'm a big fan. But there's a lot of guys I think are going to be really good receivers, or they have the possibility to be really good wide receivers. Very, very little that I think can be that true number one. So that's kind of my take there. Yeah,
I'm with you. And that's the thing. If there was a true number one, though, they're probably not going to fall there. Colton Cooper throws out Addison. I wonder how that would fit in the Broncos offense, but he's a name to watch. Kiki Boutte. I think has a lot of talent, but I'd be scared. Yeah. Maybe in the third. Broncos have 2 third-rounders. If you trade back, you pick up an extra mid-round pick. At a point, the talent's hard to deny, especially because, at least from what I know about his off-field things, it's not like he's done anything criminal, like anything that's really, 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 really concerning, a la certain players in the league. So with him, it seems to be more like, football character stuff rather than true off-field character. Though there's some of that too. But hey, if he's there in the third round, that's a really good talent. He might be the most, in terms of pure talent, he might be the most talented receiver in this draft.
He might be. He's a very, very talented player. I mean, I think people were kind of disappointed with the season that he had this year because they expected him to be this year's number one undoubtable wide receiver. That's where people kind of thought he would be before this college football season started.
He's not a rush receiver, but Jackson Smith-Njigba, I wonder where he falls to with not playing at all this season. I really like what we saw his junior year. I know he's not the measurable king, and I think that's concerning, but I think he is a master of space and separation. And I think he'll translate pretty well. He'd be one I'd consider. My earlier concern would be, I think he's probably slot only, and he's kind of redundant with Judy, but with Judy looking like more of an X or whatever, more versatile in the offense, it'd be something to consider in the first round.
Yeah, no, totally. So for him, if you like Amon-Ra St. Brown, he kind of reminds me of him. That's kind of a comp out there for him. Amon-Ra St. Brown, similar player. I think he's going to be a really good. He's not a measurable guy, like you said. I don't think he's elite in any one category, whether it be speed down the field, jumping ability, size, nothing like that. But he does know separation, and that junior year is undoubtable. We're looking at a team with that Ohio State team had 2 wide receivers that are in the NFL, Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, who are having really good years this season. Jackson Smith-Njigba was the most productive one out of all of them his junior year. So there is something to be said there with him.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm a big fan. Joey, tell the people where to find all your work. It feels like a throwback to what's on Draft On here, but where can they find all your amazing coverage?
If you guys liked that draft content, Frankie, like what Zach and I just did, Frankie and I do this every single Thursday. We break down the draft. It's fun. It's Let's Talk Broncos exclusive. If you're watching through Twitter or wherever you are, I highly, highly recommend you guys to go follow the Let's Talk Broncos YouTube, specifically the Let's Talk Broncos YouTube. That would mean a lot to us if you did that. So make sure you're following that. And then, just follow me at JR Drafts, and all my work is at Mile High Sports, writing-wise. Zach, where can they find your work, man?
Yeah, milehighsports.com for all my writing. I'm going to have a really good coaching piece. I feel really happy about it. Cal's asking about Joey's question of the day. Joey, do you want to throw out a quick question of the day, or do you want the lightning round to be it?
Let's think if I can think of one right now. 3. Can you get an air horn to buy time?
Yeah. I'll even
give me an air horn real quick.
Flair here. Yeah. Air horn incoming. Maybe not at full volume. That seems a little obnoxious.
Do you have okay, Zach? This is weird, only being two of us. Zach, do you have? I know you haven't studied the draft too carefully, but I want to just continue on that. Do you have one guy you absolutely love in this draft class, just through passing?
Yeah, I'll spotlight the guy I texted you about today, Hodges Tomlinson. He caught my eye in the semifinal game. I don't know what bowl it was, against Michigan. I loved what I saw from him there. I pulled it up. I pulled up some of his film, wanted to see, because he stood out to me in, I think, the TCU Iowa State game when I was watching that live. And I really like him. Good athlete. I don't know if he's elite, but I think he's a really, really good athlete. Definitely NFL traits. And just is a dog on the outside. I think there's talk about moving him inside. I would like him more on the outside. I also like Damari Mathis a little better on the inside, so I think there's a way it could work. I think he's also maybe a hair more developmental, so you could have him behind Damari for a year and live with that. But, keep getting good outside corners. That's a valuable position to be strong at. And he's good. He's the type of guy who you'll feel good about putting on an island. Not J.C. Horn, but I'm reminded of J.C. Horn some in his game. I think just because he's this big, strong, physical athlete wearing number 1. And
there we go.
I'm a fan of his.
There you go. Yes, and Colton Cooper says apparently he's LT's nephew. He is LT's nephew.
I didn't know that. All the more all the more reason to bet on him.
LT also went to TCU. So yeah, shout out LT.
I thought he went to North Carolina.
No, I'm pretty confident it was TCU.
Oh, I'm an idiot. I'm thinking of the other LT. Yeah.
No, Lindane.
Both LTs are great. Yeah. It's annoying. Yeah. They're absolutely TCU legends. Joey, where can they find all your work? Or we already
did that. Zach, where can they find your amazing work, dude? Writing an article every single day. Where can they find those articles?
MileHighSports.com, Zach_Seegers. Good coaching article out now. And then we should shout out Bree's work at Bree Maestas 303. She is the host extraordinaire, the Magic Johnson to our Michael Coopers. She's great. Carrying the team. Check out Fan Cave. I'm trying to think of everything she does. Check out Fan Cave. She does that every Monday. She does the Broncos Blitz podcast. Mile High Sports' other Broncos podcast every Monday. Monday you can get so much Brie in your life. So keep that in mind. Go check that out. And we'll see you all back on Friday. Joey, give us the final word.
Speak for yourself.